My name is Simon Christensen, Chief Executive Officer of Chifley Business School. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all today to the Chifley Business School 2011 graduation ceremony. So this morning's ceremony, we have two guest speakers today. We have Mr. Dario Tomat. Dario is the President of PESMA and is also the Chairman of Chifley Business School Business Board. Our guest speaker today is Professor Danny Sampson. Danny is a Professor of Management. He is also the Director of the Foundation of Sustainable Economic Development at the University of Melbourne. He is also a member of the Chifley Business School Board and is also the Academic Chair for Chifley Business School.
Well, thank you, Simon, and good morning, everybody. Distinguished guests, our graduates this year and their families. It's terrific to come to these breakfasts to see and celebrate the successes that you have all achieved. It's been some 15 years since I was at one of these breakfasts, perhaps in the same situation as you were. So I think it's marvellous that not only have we still been going after 15 years with these sorts of things, but also that we can still celebrate the fact that people are getting a benefit from an idea that grew back in 1989. I remember sitting at an PESMA board meeting worrying about what we were going to do for technical professionals in terms of the managerialism that was coming in. And that's where the postgraduate concept developed and it's grown and flourished since. We've now proudly had some 11,000 people attend parts of our program, which is a fantastic achievement. But continuing education, as you all know, is something that is lifelong. It's something that can be marked by occasions like this, where you get a testimonial, a celebration of achievement of a course. But it's also something that you have to continue to absorb in other ways. So I encourage you that even if you've finished your MBA with Chifley, that you are starting to think about those units that were electives that you left to one side because it didn't quite appeal at the time. As your management careers and technical careers develop, you will find that, yes, Chifley's got that sort of program, and we'd love to see that. The whole concept of studying for a higher degree isn't because you're going to absorb lots of new knowledge. Often what I find is the greatest benefit I've had is that the MBA studies gave me a framework within which my experience and my knowledge linked into a theoretical framework that made sense. And it is that sort of linkage that we try to achieve with our students through Chifley. On graduating, you will join the Chifley alumni, and you'll find that with the alumni program, we have a very active discussion group on the web, which I would encourage you to go, but also to maintain linkages with people that you've shared these experiences. Increasingly, Chifley's embracing the technologies that allow us to communicate and maintain contact with each other through the Ethernet type space. So let me congratulate you all on your achievements. David will shortly be here helping present the recognition of those achievements, and I wish you all the very, very best in your careers.
So what I'd like to say is some things about the characteristics of great leaders. I've made a list, and I'd like to tell you quickly about some of the things that are on that list. Whilst you who are graduating, folks, directly to your graduates, whilst you are graduating, think about your work, and you might be in a functional area now of perhaps, let's make some up, marketing. Some of you are in marketing, or perhaps you're more of a financial analyst, or I know that you're in IT, perhaps doing more technical engineering or science kind of work, or in any other functional activity in your day-to-day activities that comprise your job description, so to speak. Let me also ask you to consider yourself as a leader in the making. Leadership development is a lifelong set of activities and practices. So my friendly challenge, bit of food for thought, is how do you stack up on these characteristics that are common to great leaders? The first one is that great leaders can set vision and strategy. I've been privileged to work with some really excellent leaders, and that's one of the things I noticed about them. It's not enough, though, to be able to set vision and strategy, because, of course, the leader, the CEO, doesn't get to implement strategy on their own. So another really important characteristic, and again I'd like you to think about that, is to think about your ability to communicate and inspire others. Best example I can give you of somebody that's been in the news a lot lately for very unfortunate reasons is, of course, Stephen Jobs. What a fabulous communicator. It wasn't just that he had these great ideas within him, and many of the great ideas for those wonderful products and services, iTunes, Apple stores, did indeed originate with him, but he was able to take a workforce of tens of thousands of people with him because of his ability to stand up on the stage, get in front of large groups of people, usually staff, but also customers and dealers and resellers, and also through all sorts of media to make sure that everybody wanted to follow him. And that's really not a bad way of thinking about his quality and his power as a leader, his ability to communicate and inspire. Next one I have for you is integrity. And integrity is something that somebody once said to me, well, what do we mean by integrity? And somebody said, well, once you've given it away, then it's very difficult or perhaps impossible to get back. I was in Malaysia working with some executives in a bank recently, and when I took them through these characteristics, they said, well, which one do you think is the most important? So we had a discussion about that, and in the end they said, without our integrity, nothing else really counts. One of them said, integrity is actually a bit like virginity in the sense that once you've given it away, it's very difficult to get it back, so I believe. So think about integrity. You only really have to drop your standards once, and that's the end of your reputation. So integrity being so vital to the standards. And of course the reason for that is that the way in which organisations work is that everybody is watching their boss, everybody is watching their leaders, and their leaders set the standards on things like integrity and the standards of ethical behaviour. So that's a fabulously important thing to think about in terms of, do you take the high road on those ethical dilemmas that we all face. Leaders are not soft. Great leaders are tough and performance oriented. Great leaders set standards and they deliver themselves to those wonderful standards, and then and only then, through leading from the front, can they then ask everybody else to meet their deadlines and to deliver on their projects and make sure that their performance is the best they can be as well. But it's a leadership from the front, and it's not about being soft and nice to people necessarily. Yes, of course they are like that when the needs be, but when it comes to delivery of performance and delivery of projects, they are very much performance oriented. Things get done on time in great companies. I also believe that leaders are humble. Great leaders don't have great big egos that they hang out all the time. The really best leaders are actually very humble. And for example, when I was at the retirement dinner of that great bank executive, who I still have a fair bit to do with, he said, look, it wasn't me, it was really the 40,000 wonderful people here. That sense of humility, I think, is very, very strong in those great leaders. They are knowledge focused. They know the details. They have great energy and passion. So, I know this sounds a bit silly, but let me just throw it out to you graduates to think about. If you're a lazy person, and you're not, or you wouldn't be here today, but for somebody who is a lazy person, who doesn't really want to dedicate quite a lot of their life to a leadership role, then they're not going to be an effective leader. It really does require giving quite a lot of yourself to what I might call institution building, to that leadership aspect of it. They're also courageous. Great leaders have to be courageous and determined, and that's because you've been employed when you're in a leadership role to actually carry out strategy and it can be very lonely being a leader. I've been a leader in a university environment and in some other environments, and very often there's great resistance to the things that you feel are right. And you have to know that there are times when you've got to have the backbone, if you like, and the courage and determination to see the strategies through. That's why you're in a leadership role. Great leaders are also great team builders. They are sincere as people. So let me again say, it might well be that just let me say this as a friendly challenge, that you're not naturally a people person. The world needs all sorts of people. The world needs backroom analytical experts, but the world also needs lots of people who can lead other people. Brings me to the definition of leadership, and then I'm going to close in just a minute with a couple more remarks. And that is to say that leadership is usually thought of as getting things done through influencing others. So that idea about communicating and inspiring and setting the standards on performance and integrity and being a people person and being a team builder is something that I think we should all aspire to, even if right now my job might be marketing manager, production manager, sales manager, IT developer. What about the leader that's developing inside you? And in closing this little talk about leadership off, let me give you some really good news. People often think about whether there's a great leader there in coming up, but early days yet. People often think about whether great leaders are born to be great leaders or can be developed. And I'd like to give you my view, and it's backed up by a bunch of research, and that is some of both. A bit like IQ perhaps, and these things are always debated, but I think the really good news is that most of the characteristics that I've just run through can actually be developed, they can be learned, and they can be practiced. There is something that some of us are born with, I think, that gives us a bit of a head start. I can see it in young children. I've done a lot of coaching in sporting teams, and I can see it in 8-year-old kids getting ready for a football team. Some of them naturally start organising the other kids, and I think there's something more in some of those kids in terms of the potential, the natural potential for leadership than others. But I know a lot of people who have gone on to be great leaders because they've worked very hard at developing those characteristics. They can be developed, they can be learned, they can be practiced, they can be made more fluent, and therefore my friendly challenge to you and closing remark is, whilst you have picked up some wonderful skills and knowledge from your time here at Chifley, some of it has been technical things like marketing models and a whole bunch of things to do with financial management and accounting and production operations management, all of those wonderful analytical frameworks that will come in very useful to you. Think also about the lifelong journey that you're on, which is to become, as well as those technical proficiencies, to become an outstanding leader. Thank you very much.